Welcome to Theurgy in Martinism, a return to the divine. With me, Chuck Dunning. The content for this video essay was originally published as an article in Luminary, which is the quarterly journal of the Order Martiniste in the USA. As we proceed, I'll refer to the order as the OM. The views expressed here are my own and do not necessarily represent the official positions of the OM or any other Martinist organization. Theurgy is an important practical concept in Martinism, yet explanations of this concept can differ from one source to another and are sometimes vague. The word theurgy, taken from the Greek roots theos, meaning God, and ergon, meaning work, means divine work. In the Martinist tradition, theurgy refers to practices, whether outwardly ritualistic or inwardly contemplative, that aim at reconciliation, regeneration, and reunion with the divine source or God, which is the ultimate goal of our spiritual life. This process is the healing of the soul's fall into separation and illusion, a harmonious reintegration with the source. For Martinists, theurgy is not about manipulating the cosmos, but about restoring divine harmony within the self and thus becoming its agent in the world. Internal theurgy refers to the interior practices of prayer, meditation, self-purification, and moral alignment. It is the path favored by Saint Martin, whose meditations and his study of theosophers like Jacob Boehme, Jane Lead, and William Law led him to embrace a more intimate contemplative communion with the divine rather than continue to be immersed in the complex ceremonial system of external theurgy he learned from Martinus de Pasquale. Saint Martin's movement beyond external theurgy was not a rejection of sacred symbols, ceremony, or tradition, but a deepening of their meaning through inward realization. In Saint Martin's book, Man, His True Nature and Ministry, he refers to internal theurgy as the magism of God. And he says, quote, "This work is the very complement of prayer, since it is the very action, not to say the living generation, of the divine order, which passes into you." This work is far above all those theurgic operations, and here Saint Martin is speaking of external theurgy, which feeds our pride and encourages our false security, more dangerous to us perhaps than our weaknesses and faults, which recall us to humility. End quote. Echoing the connection Saint Martin makes between prayer and theurgy, in his essay on prayer, the OM's fourth Grand Master, Constant Chevillon, wrote, quote, "Prayer is the only true and holy magic. Ceremonial magic too often places the will at the service of pride. Prayer, on the other hand, is a very humble aspiration of the finite towards the infinite." End quote. To reiterate, this path does not dispense with ceremony and ritual. Rather, it conducts them as outward and visible elements of a prayerful relationship with God and one's companions. Thus they become experiences and expressions of loving devotion, of contemplation, and communion in motion, rather than acts of command and control over external forces and other beings. External theurgy refers to ritualized forms of spiritual work, such as those practiced in the system of the Eleucoan, established by Martinus de Pasquale. He taught that the fallen condition of humanity required intervention through ceremonial channels. This system involves complex rites invocations of spiritual entities, and energetic operations aimed at exorcising evil and assisting the world's regeneration, reintegration, and the restoration of universal harmony. These rites, while potent, are not universally accessible and require strict moral preparation. In a collection of letters referred to as Theosophic Correspondence, San Martin acknowledges that such, quote, theurgical labors and operations, end quote, can bear genuine fruit, quote, when conducted by pure, enlightened, and potent masters, end quote. Yet of such masters he also laments, quote, but alas, how rare they are. As for me, I know not one, and I am very far from having any virtuality of this kind, for my work takes the inward direction altogether, end quote. Some organizations identifying as Martinist include external theurgical operations, typically drawn from the Elu Kohen. Beyond the ceremonial operations required for gatherings and initiations, and some recommended devotional practices, the OM leaves such matters for the exploration of individual members, keeping its communal focus on initiation and internal theurgy. Where theurgy seeks divine union, thaumaturgy, literally miracle working, seeks visible demonstrations of power, such as manifestations, apparitions, and other wonders. While often associated with sainthood or spiritual mastery, in the Martinist worldview, thaumaturgy is spiritually dangerous when sought for its own sake. Thaumaturgy is not taught in the OM. At the center of Martinist spirituality lies not merely practice or knowledge, but love. It is our divine principle, moral compass, and spiritual force. For Louis Claude de Saint Martin, love was not a virtue among others, but the animating essence of all true theurgy. Whether practiced internally or externally, theurgy without love as its motive and intention becomes mechanical and even spiritually dangerous. Saint Martin wrote, quote, God has graciously bestowed upon us the love fire which he deigns to kindle in our souls, which puts us in position to obtain the happiness which it is his first wish we should have. Those who, like common theurgists and mechanical Kabbalists, believe in the virtue of names devoid of this generative fire, are in a dangerous error, end quote. And that's another excerpt from his Theosophic Correspondence. Saint Martin's preferred path of internal theurgy is saturated with love. It is an inward offering of the heart, a humble desire to be unified with the divine, not through merit or technique, but through surrender, affection, and compassion. Here love is both the means and the end. The contemplative silence of internal theurgy is not cold detachment, but a waiting heart inflamed by divine longing and care for others. In Martinism, theurgy is ultimately a prayerful path of return from the fragmented fallen self to the unified divine presence within and ultimately without. Whether expressed through contemplative stillness or sacred rite, theurgy is meant to purify the soul, illuminate the heart, and prepare the human being to become once again an image and active likeness of the Creator. Miracles may occur, but they are not the work itself. For the Martinist, then, true power lies not in the mind or in the hands, but in the heart that moves and guides them, not in changing the world by force, but in becoming a loving vessel that prayerfully receives and gently pours out the light of the Redeemer. Thank you for joining me in this reflection on theurgy in Martinism. I wish you all light, life, and love.